Mr. North, it's just managed the YouTube for us.
Amazing, isn't it? Thank you, Paul. Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone to the meeting today and start off with a public forum, which is an update on the community garden. Cynthia Flanagan. So, well,
sorry, the mouse is not working. Yeah.
Cross over to Cynthia. You there, Cynthia?
It's coming.
Okay.
She's coming.
So it's Christmas.
Yeah.
No, it's my ear.
Cynthia? You there, Cynthia? Something's gone wrong.
She needs to unmute. You need to unmute. Yes, there she goes.
Hi.
Yeah,
Can you
Cynthia.
hear me?
Yes, we can. Yep. Far ahead. Update on the community garden.
Okay, hi. For those who don't know me, I'm the coordinator of Growcott's Organic Community Garden in Middlemarch, which has been operating for 15 years. This garden surrounds a 130-year-old historically significant station master's house, which is part of a uniquely intact, iconic heritage railway precinct. The gardens are open to the community, non-profit community groups, and the public to pick fresh vegetables and fruit anytime. Projects from the gardens also supply our local community pantry. The gardens create a space for social well-being by providing an inclusive, supportive, and educational environment. Our school children utilise the gardens for outdoor education sessions and families picnic under the large shade tree. Volunteer gardeners work in the garden anytime it suits them. It is for these reasons that it would not be appropriate to have the house privately occupied. The station master's house has the potential to be a multi-purpose community building, providing space for a collective of various community groups. These groups would need to complement the already established community gardens. Any decision on the future of the whole railway precinct will need to involve the community in this process with open, transparent, and timely communication. Many people in our community and further afield value our heritage railway precinct and want to see it restored and utilised by the community under community management. Now, I've only taken a couple of minutes, thank you. And I'd also like to ask that Andrea, who has a little bit more to say on this and we've been working together, has the remainder of my time. Thanks.
Thank you, Cynthia. Andrea, would you like to?
Well, I haven't got Andrea in yet.
Oh, okay.
Do you want me to let her in?
Yep, okay.
She's there. Just muted at the moment.
Andrew, would you like to unmute and you could fire away, please?
Yeah, I've unmuted. Shall I start the video? I'll do that. So at least okay, yeah, so as Cynthia said, working together on this. So Cynthia, on the picture, and I'm looking at the bigger picture. So there's always buzzwords around, and sustainability and resilience are the ones that we hear over and over again. And as a community, it seems to me that we like to think of ourselves as both resilient and resourceful, and that we're independent and we get on with the job, whatever it may be. We're also living at a time when the cost of living is, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
That's not, I'll do that. So please, what's going on? I'm getting feedback. Something's going up with the recording.
Yeah, I'm getting that too, Andrea. Okay, radio, understand. Just let me find a YouTube thing. Okay. Zoom. Sorry about that. Okay, well, that was disconcerting. Okay, so where I was, that we're independent, get on with the job, whatever it may be. And we're also living at a time when the cost of living is skyrocketing, where food costs have increased 5.9% in a year, and fruit and vegetables have increased 15% in the same year. And that's from the Stats Department, January 2021 to January 2022. And as well, fuel costs are burgeoning, partly as a result of the war in Ukraine, as well as in the context of global climate change, the non-negotiable need to move away from fossil fuels. And in this context, community garden is becoming increasingly important within Middlemarch. It's now supplying fresh fruit and vegetables to the community, and Cynthia's initiative saw the community pantry happen, and they are being used. There are increasingly more people visiting the garden and eating from it. There are plans to establish more tunnel houses in the future, to set up a nursery which would provide trees for riparian planting and land restoration, provide vegetable seedlings to the many gardeners, and provide exotic trees, shrubs and perennials that are sourced and grown locally. And these initiatives are fundamental to both our food resilience and independence as a community and our adaptation to a changing climate. And there may well be a time when it is simply too expensive to drive into Dunedin for overpriced and aged produce, or the roads are closed, or bridges are out due to increasingly common flood events. None of us actually know, in the same way that none of us 3 years ago could have imagined the COVID pandemic and its impact on each and every one of us. So in the light of an uncertain future, and for the community garden to fully develop its potential, there must be security of location into the future. And it's always important to look at the big picture, to get excited about possibilities, and not let the nuts and bolts and the logistics stop us from thinking outside the box and thinking imaginatively about what sort of community we really want to live in. And we must stand up to those people and institutions who say, that isn't possible, you can't do that, you can't do this. Shane and I in our fight to save Fuldamar were told exactly the same thing. You can't, it's too late, it's too big a battle. And many of the wonderful things that people have achieved would not have happened if the naysayers had been listened to. Now, there are a lot of people with a lot of terrific ideas and skills and initiatives in Middlemarch, but what is constantly thwarting all of these initiatives is a lack of space, both of land and buildings, which people can use with some degree of security into the future. There are spinners and weavers here with ideas of using supposedly worthless strong wool to make high quality garments and textiles. There's Project STEAM that wants to restore an old locomotive for active service between Middlemarch and Pukerangi. There are people who would like to develop a food cooperative. There are craftspeople who would like to have outlets for their work within the township. And all of these require space, land, buildings, and continuity of occupation. And all of these contribute to community well-being and a sense of resilience and independence. And it is the space that is so scarce in Middlemarch. Well, access to the space. The sale of the Uncut building last week sees another site that was paid for and maintained by the people of the Strath Taieri going into private ownership. We rolled over with this one due to a lack of information being publicly available. And we can't keep on rolling over. And this is our concern with the community garden. This is where we are with the community garden, the station master, railway precinct. And in today's agenda, and I quote from the
that was posted today. Dunedin City Holdings Limited have advised that after discussions with DCC, they have agreed to defer any requests to lease Dunedin Railway properties at this time, as those assets and all Dunedin Railways assets are in hibernation pending future decisions from the council. Pending future decisions, no date. Under Dunedin Railways / Dunedin City Council ownership and control, nothing of any consequence has eventuated out of these buildings for the people of Middlemarch. Now, Dunedin City Holdings Limited is the company through which the DCC and Dunedin Railway manages these assets. And in the 2021 Constitution of Dunedin City Holdings, under capacity and objectives, it states, the principal objectives, this is a quote, the principal objectives of the company are to C, exhibit a sense of social and environmental responsibility by having regard to the interests of the community in which it operates and by endeavouring to accommodate or encourage those while able to do so. And I think we can all unambiguously say that DCH and DCC have done no such thing, and instead they've let the buildings fall into disrepair, and any restoration of them becomes increasingly expensive and prohibitive. And refusing to countenance any suggestion or desire to lease from the community by citing hibernation is pretty outrageous, and even more so when the community is full of ideas. We need the space here. The people of Middlemarch have the imagination and resourcefulness to turn this historical area into a vibrant and alive precinct. A railway station with no people makes no sense. And I would suggest that we ask to buy the entire precinct for $1 so we can get off our asses and actually get going with doing things rather than wrangling over who owns what and who will make what decision by when. And we're always waiting for someone else to tell us what we can and what we can't do. And in the meantime, there is complete and utter opaqueness about the buildings and any plans for them. There are rumours and hearsay in the community, none of which is conducive to open and constructive discussion. And after requesting and being promised that the ownership of these buildings and plans for them would be looked into at a community board meeting, and I think it was about 6 months ago, there's been no follow-up. And I put in an Official Information Act request to the DCC on January the 6th to see if I could make any sense of what was going on behind the scenes. And I got a response on March the 7th, which really only told me what we all already knew. Now, Cynthia said to me the other day that we can all do more together and that we are better together. And that really struck a chord with me. And last night I attended the Mid-Taieri meeting, and it was terrific. People were working together, people looking at the big picture, dreams and aspirations, and it provided a sense of people working together. And we really must, as a community, talk about what we want for Middlemarch. How we'd like to see these buildings and land used, and all the ideas and dreams people have so far, they're all complementary. They all would work well together. None is exclusive of another. So I would like to suggest concretely 2 things: that we offer to buy the precinct for $1. The nuts and bolts of it, I don't know, but it's the bigger picture we're talking about. And 2, that we have a large meeting independently chaired and openly discuss how we see our community now and in the future. And what we would really like to hear, because we don't really know what your opinions are, we'd really like to hear from each board member and the DCC rep on your positions on the precinct. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea and Cynthia. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Questions only. Questions only.
Yeah. Any questions from board members? Very well explained, Andrew. Thank you. Okay, that's appreciate both of your time and your explanations, and won't just throw the paper away. We'll keep it and keep looking into different things. So, yeah, thank you very much, both of you. So, with that.
Don't need to.
Okay, so I'll leave now. That's what happens, is it? And then come back to watch.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, move on to apologies. Any apologies? Can't hear you, John.
Blair Dale, but I don't know what he's up to. I'll have to find out.
Good luck.
I might get a bottle of honey, eh?
Okay, somebody like to move Blair Dale?
John's moved.
John's moved it. Somebody second it, please.
Give it a second.
Thank you, Mike. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Oh, sorry, just before we carry on, we'll introduce Mike Perkins. He's taken over Tom Dyer's job and he's going to be liaising quite a bit with us. So we hope not really. We hope there's no water problems, but there will be. So Mike knows him, Jock knows him. Mark? Mike Perkins and Leanne, Mike Perkins.
How you doing?
He's been up there to drive around, so reasonably positive. Okay, confirmation of the agenda. Alterations or additions? Okay, somebody like to move that, please?
I'll move that.
John and Mark. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Item 4, declarations of interest. Any alterations or changes to the schedule that we already have? Okay. Somebody like to move that, please?
Yep.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. All in favour, please say aye.
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 Okay, we'll go back now to minutes of the last meeting, 3rd February. True and correct record. I couldn't see anything that was out of the ordinary. The earthquake buildings, I haven't heard anything back yet. It was brochures sent out around. Haven't heard any results on
Mr.
that.
Chair, if I can make a comment on that. We're pretty keen and quite open and saying when things aren't going well. And at the last meeting, we did note an appreciation to the roading group for their efficient and effective roadworks on 87. And I know that there was one member of the team there, but it was kind of intended as a more wider note of appreciation, and I would like that recorded. I think it's appropriate just to let them know that we do appreciate that when they do such a good job. With that minor amendment, I'd move that it be accepted.
Okay, second it, please. Thank you, Leanne. All vote, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Middle March flooding mitigation. Michelle Midland.
Second it.
Did the other ones get a copy of it?
Yes, exactly.
I don't know what people thought about the
Well, hang on, let's let them come in. So you might want to let them speak. Yes.
okay. Michelle or Jean?
Here we go. Yeah.
Okay, would somebody like to give us an update, please, on the Middle March flooding mitigation?
Right, thank you for providing this link and inviting us to this meeting. I'm not sure what you mean by an update on the Middle March flood. We've provided the community update number 6. At this also, we weren't present at the meeting that was held earlier this year. I'd like that noted, please. We didn't receive that link, and I'd like to clarify that we have been in attendance in meetings. Even if myself hasn't been there, we have certainly attended and provided updates. I'll take the report as read, and through the chair, you can ask questions on the report, or you can ask specific questions around our activities. I have Gary LaHood, River Engineer here, and we also have Jean-Luc, Hazards Manager, Natural Hazards Manager online as well. So you tell me how you'd like to proceed.
I'd just like to ask if there's any update on March Creek one.
So in the report, we've got details around our inspections. Gary, can you give an update on the recent activities that we've been undertaking, please?
Yep. You can hear me there. We've been doing monthly inspections, checking all the culverts and reaches of March Creek and all the other creeks that affect the town. I've found several blockages since over December, January. 2 blockages were down at the sluice gate on Yorsberry, and I cleared those. We found one at Browns Creek up at Gladbrook Road, and also one in the fence downstream of the highway. They were all cleared as they were found. Work's done to date. Sean finished his little bit of creek through Dead Bollock around through his place there at the highway, so there should be no more flooding on the highway or issues there. Dewar Creek and March Creek, there were just little bits and pieces done on a couple of properties just to tidy up a wee couple of blockages. And there was also a section of Browns Creek which Lindsay Crothers took me to just, when was that? I think it was it just before Christmas, or there was a wee event? Oh, when that event for the West Coast came across. We had an issue, a small amount of rain came in and put some water down the back of the showgrounds. Lindsay Crothers took me up to Browns Creek, just downstream of Kate's house, and we found some blockages in there, which were removed immediately. And just on the premise that we thought that West Coast flooding or storm was going to come through. In the end, it didn't equate to as bad as what it was meant to be. Current work, we've just finished Mould Street at Blind Billy's, cleaning that out. So that should work better. There should be less flooding to the house downstream of the Oxbow. There's 2 more little bits and pieces just on other streams that are just all lined up to do for other landowners. They're doing them themselves, but there's a wee bit on Doughboy Creek for Ian Ritchie and Nant Creek for Grant Tisdall. And other than that, we're just continuously just doing our monthly inspections to make sure there's no blockages in the creek.
Gary, may I ask, is there any chance of cleaning below the highway on Doughboy Creek?
On
Rennick's property?
Yep, we've had a look down through there. The issue for it spilling into Ian Ritchie's is I discovered an old culvert just below the road culvert to the right hand side, where I believe Karen McAtamity, the McAtamidys might have had that farm or something, and there was an old irrigation system through it.
Yeah, they had water dike down that.
Yeah. So we found a where they'd sealed off the top end of the pipe had blown out through there, and every time Doughboy was coming up, it was just sending water across the farm. So we think Doughboy itself might have enough capacity in it, especially because it's got the same cross-sectional area as what's underneath the highway bridge culvert.
Thank you. The other one too, while we're on it, March Creek one, the cemetery, poor old buried people are getting quite wet all over, not just their toes. That creek down, the creek going through John Eaton's, and he's offered to clean that out. But let's get something done that gets the water nearer the river, away from it. It'll help release the surface stuff from the overflow channel that goes through our paddock and a few other people. And we'll get it down near the river around there's an old creek bed around there that goes round to the river towards Garthmore.
Yep. No, that's what I'm looking at the moment. I have had one look through there. mainly for blockages first, but there are some places there that could be sort of, the cross-sectional area could be increased in size to allow more water through. I do have a concern that with all the fencing off of parts of March Creek, especially round through the cemetery from Cemetery Road down, there's no more stock grazing in there. So there's very long rank grass in there that is a silt catcher. So every time there's a flood, it's going to start sort of decreasing in size as silt builds up on the grasses.
But yeah, I can understand that, but that's not really our problem that they're not allowed to graze the creeks, is it?
Yeah.
And we get
So,
penalised. And the other one we've talked about and looked at, and I think would eliminate a lot of our problems, is the bridge over the railway line. We had a suggestion from Mike Perkins. We had a look around last week and wonder if we could cut some bigger holes in the RSJs to allow more water to go through, to get it away from the main street.
It's not our asset, and whether or not it's better to lift it 500 millimetres on blocks and incorporate it into part of the rail trail, that's another option.
Gary, we can talk to that,
Yep.
John, Luke and I.
Yeah. Okay. All right. All good.
It's just, I know some people don't, when the businesses were going in March and the main street, they were happy to lift it right out. Now those businesses aren't there and they don't want the bridge touched. So trying to look at a remedy that will help everyone, but particularly the township. And that was just, Mike, we had a drive around the other day and that was a thought he had, that being of an engineer, metal and that, he just thought that could do it without taking away the appearance of the bridge and let a lot more water go through and go down and get further or quicker down towards the river without plastering it all down Mole Street.
Yeah.
So, yeah, questions? Mike?
Yeah, thanks, Chair.
Sorry,
I'm not sure if this question's best gone with Michelle or with Gary, but thank you for both coming today and speaking to us. Could I, and it's really just for the sake of anyone that might be watching this rather than for my own information, but I know, for example, if you own a house in Atra, most people are paying almost $1,000 for regional council rates, and the greater part of that is obviously flood protection and obviously a drainage component as well. But I'm just wondering, if the Middlemarch Township had a will to get into a serious flood protection scheme, what would be the process for that to happen? What would enable that to happen? And what sort of costs on a per household basis might be incurred?
I can answer to that, Councillor Lord. We will come back to March Creek and talk about the bridge later if you like. We do have an update on that. We've been working with Janine Benson on that, so I can answer your question first. That's a good question, thank you, Mike. And what I can say is currently since January 2021, the ORC has spent over $330,000 on tactical maintenance in Middlemarch. Middlemarch collectively only pays into a river management rating, and that's only a few thousand per annum. We currently don't have a targeted rate or a flood scheme or a flood protection scheme or river management scheme in Middlemarch, as you're aware. So the work that we do in Middlemarch is carried out under our Dunedin Rivers Management Fund, which is our river management for Dunedin, which Middlemarch is included. To answer your question, how do you get into a flood protection scheme? It's probably a lot easier to get in to a flood protection scheme as opposed to ongoing maintenance, etc. When I say it's a lot easier to get into it, there needs to be an investigation process, obviously, to analyse what options suit this environment. Then we need to look at, go for consultation. We need to understand the affordability of a flood protection scheme or a river management scheme. We are talking millions potentially, depending on what the options are. there would have to be a targeted rate set up potentially. Again, I'm just speaking very generically here based on my experience with our other schemes. And then we would obviously maintain that, provide a level of service, and have to consider what that looks like, you know, in our annual planning, long-term planning process. But at the very short order of starting that, you have to carry out investigations to determine problem definition around what we're looking to do here. Noting, and Jean-Luc can comment on this, you know, we're in the hazards in Middlemarch are quite dynamic in terms of the scale of the debris flows and, you know, intensity of rainfall that we can get in that area. Before I ask Jean-Luc to comment on possibly some of the hazards, what we have been discussing internally with our management is possibly looking to year 2. It's not approved yet, but starting the initial broader investigation of the Middlemarch area as a catchment that would help inform us around some of this information. Then it would be up to the community if they want to, you know, pursue that, and obviously going to council to get into a scheme, or we assess what options around you know, the types of I guess methods that you may want to undertake in terms of a scheme or other mitigation methods. Yeah.
So
Sorry.
thank you. Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you for that answer. Can I assume, just like other schemes, though, if a scheme was to be put in place around Middlemarch, do you assume it would be pretty much user pays and maybe some exacerbator or something, contributions from those above and below, but by and large, a cost of millions would be borne by the local community by and large?
Yes, Councillor Lord, it would be, it's a beneficiary, you know, system. So, and it would be a user pays, and that's how we form that targeted rating around the scheme. Yep.
So in a lot of cases, it may actually be cheaper for the people of Middlemarch to not actually have such a scheme, but do what they need at their own levels, whether it's raising houses or, you know, putting in better pumping themselves, or what are the...
I think what needs to happen is the green light to go ahead and collect this broader information and assess what does hazard mitigation look like in Middlemarch. You know, I think flood schemes are a harsh word to use. It's quite a hard structure, and you know, we want to preserve the environment, work with the community, but also look at the environmental landscape as well here, and make sure that, you know, you're not taking away the reasons why you live there by having hard engineering solutions around. But what it might identify is there are some methods or layers of methods that Middlemarch need to incorporate to manage the hazards in this area. And that may not necessarily just be to a multi-million-dollar scheme that has to have ongoing funding indefinitely. But it might be a series of mitigation measures that are smaller scale that can help, such as looking at March Creek capacity, looking at, you know, other types of techniques that we can use once we identify the problem definition of the hazards.
Thank you very much.
There could be options. Jean-Luc, did you want to comment?
Yeah, just 2 comments from me. One is reinforcing your point, Michelle, about the nature of the natural hazard in the Middlemarch area. You know, it's not just a water flooding issue, it's also sediment that need to be accounted for if we're going to look to mitigation option and how the sediment interact with the channels and the capacity of those channels. The other point is about mitigation. I think there is also a step of definition of level of service, what we want to achieve with mitigation. You know, either, as Michelle was describing, small scale measure that will help but not reduce maybe the flood or the other natural hazard to a point that necessarily match the land use, or if you want a higher level of protection, which will mean a more comprehensive flood protection scheme. So I think that phase about, what the level of protection the community needs, that's need also to be understood and discussed.
You finished, Paul? Jean Lee?
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, good, thank you. Is there any other questions?
Yeah,
Robin, sorry. You're a bit quiet.
Sorry. Yeah, a couple of things. Michelle, thank you very much for the report. I'm just wanting to check, firstly, that it's okay to publish that on our social media page, just to make, to make it more readily available to the general public.
Yeah, absolutely, Robin.
Great, thank you. Barry's already commented on this, and I'd just like to reinforce it, I guess. Your attachment 2, which is the Middlemarch flood damage repair status. A lot of work having been done upstream, essentially, of the township, but not much shown in the lower part, and that has been partly addressed with comments already. But it would be useful, I think, for that to be reflected in any future report, to show that actually, it is being looked at actively, and it's not being ignored, because just getting the water away from the township is actually quite important, I think. And you're obviously aware of that, and obviously there's work being done, but it would be great to see that recorded. The main question I've got, though, is that you've made a comment at the bottom of page 2 that says the focus since June 2021 has been on short-term tactical maintenance work. And then on the next page, point 7, first paragraph, you refer to the dependency on funding approval for the 2022-2023 annual plan. Two questions there. Who initiates that long-term planning bid, and how can we encourage that to get a higher priority? So 2 simple questions, really.
Thank you, Robin. 2 very good questions. Just on the attachment number 2, and I can probably better qualify that. That was the initial map, sort of, that we built at January 21. So it's probably, we could improve that to show sort of where the work's happening. That was just the critical areas at the time of the flood. So it's a really good point. It's probably not reflecting our ongoing work. So I can actually have that re-looked at to sort of expand it to where our areas of focus are.
Because it does refer to it being an update as at March 2022. So
yes, it did, but it refers to those damage areas. So I think I need to change the context of that. So my apologies on that. I think that's a good thing to do. Your first question around the short-term tactical maintenance. What I'm talking about with short-term tactical maintenance is the work that Gary's doing month to month, quarter to quarter, year to year. The reason I call that short-term is it's a cycle of constant monitoring, checking where blockages are or areas that can be improved, or things like that fall into our business as usual. That falls under that river management maintenance budget that we talk about, that I talked about earlier. So when I refer to our long-term plan, the community has an absolute opportunity to consult on long-term plans, both district and regional. Our long-term plan cycle finished 15 months ago, so the annual plans are in place for this current cycle of triennium. So we're currently in year 1. We're about to go into year 2, but the long-term consultation will start somewhere during year 3. for the next long-term plan cycle. Now, my advice would be, I think absolutely the community should campaign through consultation when long-term plans are being built. It's a great opportunity to put your concerns and areas that you want regional council to focus on. But I think, Robin, as I was saying to Councillor Lord before, leading up to that process, speaking with my colleague, Dr. Jean-Luc Payon, there's an opportunity that we can actually start some of this all-important data collection information or broader investigation, possibly in year 2, with some areas of Jean-Luc's annual plan actually, but yet to be approved. But we've examined that there is a capacity. We could probably start some of that work, and that work then helps inform what sorts of options or solutions are really viable for Middlemarch. So I think that's a good starting point. Not only that, that information session, that mapping, which is still sort of being developed, yet to be on an online, that also provided a lot of groundwork around what was experienced following the January 2021 flood. So I think there's a series of steps that need to go through to sort of lead to longer term solutions and hard solutions. Or, as Councillor Lord mentioned, it might be then you get to that affordability stage of, here are all of our options. What do we as a community feel we want to do? Which may be a combination or a layer of methods, right? Which is resilience around your own personal property or township, and a combination of what regional council may consider including.
Right, thank you. That's comprehensive. The question though, just you have got the sentence that starts, depending on funding approval for the 22-23 annual plan.
Yes.
I guess that's the bit that I'm particularly interested in. How do we encourage a higher priority? Who do we lobby? Who do we speak to do that?
Thank you. That's a really good question. Certainly ORC councillors are a good start.
Thank you.
But you know, I'm also a good voice in an ear to hear that, you know, Dr. Jean-Luc Payon and I are really, you know, we're here wanting to understand what the community wants and what direction we can take that in. When I say depending on funding, we're clearly about to embark on our annual plan consultation. What that might mean is there's some tweaks or other, but you know, we just need to make sure that we can prioritise our current planned works and be able to incorporate this. Dr. Jean-Luc's got his hand up, so I think he might comment on that as well.
Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, I just wanted to remind, you just said it, about the consultation and engagement that's going to start for the 2022-2023 annual plan. So that's an opportunity also for people to submit about the annual plan and where they see the budget needs to go.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and that's actually, thank you for reminding me of that. Yes, you do have the opportunity now when the annual plan consultation comes out, along with our oversight of this, that, you know, this is important to the community, and I feel from ORC's perspective, we have been very active, very supportive since January 2021 to taking steps and measures to ensure there is a consistent maintenance cycle getting community feedback and looking at next steps. So, you know, the annual plan consultation only strengthens that.
Thank you very much. Just, you were going to cover a wee bit on that March Creek on the bridge. Is that Gary?
Yes.
Or Michelle? Just while we're on.
Yes, sorry. Thank you, Chair. I wanted to touch on Janine Benson from DCC, Jean-Luc, Dr. Jean-Luc Payon and I have been meeting for a couple of meetings over the last month to discuss a combined approach on looking at March Creek. When I say combined approach, we've finished the survey now. Dr. Jean-Luc can comment on that in a minute if he wishes. So we're now ready to actually take that data and use it to model scenarios. And some of those scenarios means the constriction of the bridge or other areas. So having the discussions and working with DCC on that being a priority is a really good outcome. We can focus some modelling on that and what that may look like, as in lifting it or otherwise. So that work is planning to commence in June. And we're working with DCC on that. We meet fortnightly to discuss these issues. Sorry, not issues, to discuss the progress around this and what options may be considered. So I'm pretty happy about that, actually, that we can start that modelling work. Did you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, we don't know when the flood's going to come, but it'd be nicer to be sooner than later. I know March, June's not far away, but I think otherwise, Michelle, if there's another flood there could be some drastic action taken by some locals to let the water get away quickly. And I mean, they'll get the full backing of the community, but we don't know when a flood's going to hit. And some of the remedial work that's been done, like the one on the rail lines, helped. And whilst I'm here, I'd also like to thank Gary LaHood for his patience, taking phone calls from different people at different times with different issues. And they've tidied up that Browns Creek, which before that was coming out with trees in the road and it was flooded, and you'll see it. A tree at the bottom end of the showground by the cattle yards, it's got that wet in the roots that actually fell over. So, Gary, I think what you've had done there has made a big difference. Thank you.
And look, I think you know, if we had, you know, a significant event that was coming in, I'm quite sure you know, measures that needed to be taken would be considered by the relevant, you know, owners, authorities. We don't own that asset, as you know, but I'm quite sure that you would get support on what needed to happen.
Thank you. Michelle, I was under the understanding that there was a flood protection system for Middlemarch, which carried out the causeway and the weir and all that many years ago. And I just thought that was just one of the flood protection schemes, but then it's sort of everything stopped, I suppose you'd have to say. And obviously we've got to pick up and gain traction again.
Okay, I wasn't aware that was a view that there was a flood protection scheme there. I am aware of the diversion that was done on March Creek, but yeah, I would have to investigate that. But no, that's sort of not our current positioning that there is a scheme in Middlemarch. But I can certainly get some archives or look into that.
It could be 25 years, somewhere around there ago. It's quite some time. And it may have been an unofficial thing that was done to help many years ago. So yeah, it'd be nice if there's a wee bit of a record about it.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
So with no further, I'd just like to thank the three of you for being available.
Oh, hang on, Barry. I had another question if I could.
Quickly.
Michelle, some years ago, and it was preceded your time, we had a meeting in Middlemarch, Barry and myself, and a couple other members of the community board, and we met with the then chair and the then CEO of the regional council, and there was discussion that they were going to get a process set up where farmers along the river could use a global consent to extract gravel. And at that time, a bit of a promise was made that the work would be done and farmers would be able to take their own gravel, which they thought at that time would also have benefits for the river. And it was just to save individual farmers spending a lot of money to get consents. And I realise you've probably never heard of this, but I'm just wondering if there could be any work done in that area that maybe farmers could get back to retrieving gravel themselves out of the river, which would have an ongoing positive effect.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Lord. I actually care quite a lot about gravel in Otago, and it varies. Look, what I can say about gravel management is it's most unlikely that ORC would hold a global consent or a consent that third parties use. It's sort of probably a little bit problematic to manage and administer. So I'll just make that comment. That's because we do hold consents, and they are coined as global consents that allow us to do our work across Otago. We use those consents obviously for the work that we've been doing around Middlemarch and other parts of Otago. Those consents don't allow us to extract gravel. We've never held a consent to extract gravel. What we have been doing though is we're in the process of renewing our suite of consents that form our global consents, and we have included gravel extraction for hazard mitigation. Now, this is an interim step to understanding what an Otago-wide gravel management strategy may look like. When I say it's an interim step, it allows us to address gravel aggradation across Otago where it causes flooding or it's a hazard, and we have the responsibility through the environmental management plan and notifications to manage that. It is a good interim step because it allows us through the course of our global consent to then work on what our strategy and ruling on how we would allow the scenario that you're talking about to be affected. I don't think it's necessarily under one consent or a suite of global consents. I think this involves consents and policy coming together as we renew our water plan, our regional plans, and looking at setting up, the way that gravel is managed. ECAN, I talk about ECAN a lot in this space. They have that type of scenario happening where they actually have rules that allow for gravel extraction through requests to extract gravel. So it's managed through a gravel management officer, and it's done very well in Canterbury. So I think, we're in the space where we're going to be looking to that, and that's what this long-term plan cycle will be examining through our team, engineering, natural hazards, and other teams. So for the short term, we have the ability to manage gravel to a limit, but I'm not investigating a global consent that allows groups of people to sort of remove gravel.
Yeah,
I don't know if that helps you, but there is thinking in that space, Councillor Lord, where I am sort of moving through this.
Thank you. Yeah, look, I understand your situation, and I totally realise that what I was talking about you've probably never heard of. But I do think that if the council even held such a consent, in a lot of cases, they would not need to do the work. farmers would be happy in lots of cases to take gravel out of the river and use it on their own tracks and lanes, and sell it to the local contractor, or local contractors would take it for roading. There's all sorts of ways that it could work to everyone's benefit. So, but thank you very much, and for all of your staff for coming today.
Okay, thank you. And we do like coming to these meetings, and would prefer that we front you to talk about your questions than sort of watch it later. So please don't be strangers to us. We spend a lot of time in your area, even though you don't necessarily see us all the time.
Yeah, thank you very much, all of you. And just adding to that, what Mike did say, that originally that we were going for the consent so that the council could take gravel out of different areas to make it cheaper to get more gravel put out for our buck.
Okay.
So
I understand the concept.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. See you. Bye.
Just before that,
Yes.
you leave that subject though, Mr. Chair, if there's one other question I've got, and it was raised in the public forum, it's been raised previously, and that is just looking at the level of degradation of the vegetation upstream, up on the mountain itself. That has quite a direct impact on the flow rates and the flow off of the mountain. Is that going to be part of your considerations, or are you looking just really at the mechanical side of it?
Help me, Robin, with the considerations. You mean in terms of
Okay,
water?
in terms of your options and management.
Oh, right.
And
yep.
How you address the flooding issues. The loss of vegetation and the change of vegetation, I should say, rather than loss of vegetation, but significant change over years. It's well known that tussock is a major water retention moderator on slope, and same with shrublands. So revegetating or encouraging that, both on the immediacy of the stream banks of the riparian sections and perhaps on the slopes themselves, may actually, will have some significant impact on the degree of flooding down through the valley, down through the village and further downstream. So I guess the question is that part of your consideration? Are you going to look at that? It comes under a different part of the council, I realise that, in terms of that biodiversity.
I can respond to that, Michelle, if you...
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be part of it. Like when I talked before about the natural hazard in the Middlemarch area, it's not only a water issue, it's also a sediment issue. So that's definitely going to be part of the investigation, how to maintain the sediment where they are instead of the sediment coming down, if possible. That may not be possible, but it's very conscious that the problem is not only a water issue, it's water and sediment coming down the hills.
Great, thank you very much.
But Robin, I would think that's something that's always encouraged and a really positive thing to think about. Vegetation that helps prevent sediment. So and there's probably a lot of avenues that can assist with that. But absolutely,
it's not purely just the sediment, although the degree and velocity of water certainly increases the issue of sedimentation and sediment movement, but just the off-flow from the hill, if that can be moderated, even moderately, would have a significant impact downstream. All the studies that have been done on tussock particularly, it's a major contributor to moderating our water regimes.
Absolutely.
So it looks like it's part of that equation, and I'm thankful for that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very, very much again.
Thank you.
Middlemarch, it'd be nice to see you up there. Thank you. Just again.
We're
the
there
question-
more than you realise. Thank you.
Jolly good. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye. Somebody like to move the Middlemarch flood mitigation, please. Robin, second. Leanne, all in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Maybe they're muted somewhere.
Yes.
So we've got.
Number 7, scattered seeds.
Yeah.
Okay. Item 7, scattered seeds digital archive community project. Digital. Okay. Mercer and John Valley.
Yep.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Councillor Lord and members of the board. Thank you so much for having us and your support for our course. Jill and I are here today to hopefully enlist your support in a community project that we have in mind. I'm just going to hand over to Jill to talk about the Scattered Seeds Archive to begin with. So over to you, Jill.
Hello everyone, thank you for letting us have this opportunity to talk to you today. So we manage the Dunedin Public Library's digital archive, Scattered Seeds, and the aim of the archive is to tell the stories and collect the memories and mementos of the people who have made Dunedin their home. We would love to get your support in order to connect with the community and to preserve these stories for perpetuity in this archive. So I'll pass over to Kay because she's going to tell you more about the project that we want to work with the community on and show you some other images from the archive.
Yes, indeed. If there's time, I will show you some images. I'm conscious that you're very busy and we only have a short time. So basically our community project, we would like to invite the communities around Dunedin because we are based obviously in the CBD, but we serve the wider community, the full community. And we would like to invite the communities to take part by choosing their own community project that they would like us to focus on for the archive. So if you have a particular event or a particular happening that's occurred in your community, or there's a particular person or group of people, a community organisation or a building or anything that you think the community could really engage with, we would love to hear from you. So we're seeking your support to invite the community to do that because you have the ear of the community. You may even have some ideas yourselves as to a project or projects that you'd like us to focus on. What we would love to do is to come out to the community. So we would also appreciate your help to find a place that we could be to open it's a bit like the Antiques Roadshow, if you want to think of it like that, where we bring along a scanner. We have our little, what do we call it, Jill? The Digitization Centre, a mobile digitization centre, which is basically a scanner in the back of the car. And we come along, we bring a mini exhibition so people can come along and have a look at what we've done for communities already, just to enjoy some photos and information, historical details, and to talk to the people. So if they want to come along and focus on this particular project, they can come and share their memories of the project, or if they have their own memories that they particularly want to, if they've got a wad of photographs, a suitcase even of photographs that they are worried about, they want to preserve them, they can come along and talk to us. And aside from the project, it could be their own personal project. We can help them with that. So it's a free service. We're attached obviously to the Dunedin Public Library system. We're part of that. We're the digital archive for that. So we provide a free service and we'd really love the community to participate with us. So we're seeking your help to do that. What we would like to do with this is to, the aim of the project really is to connect generations. So we'd like young people to talk to old people and gather their stories. We'd like to preserve their voices, the voices of the people who have the memories, and bearing in mind the older memories of the older folk, and we're losing them. So we want to collect those while we still can. And we'd love to hear their voices. So if they're willing to be recorded, so much the better. We can have all the histories that the younger generation can listen to in the future and hear what it was like for those people growing up at the time in that particular moment and really experience that. Because there's only so much books can tell you. Even though I'm a librarian, I'm telling you that. But to hear the voices and to actually experience what they've experienced is really valuable to all generations. The archive is a free archive. It's open to the world. So it also turns the eyes of the world onto Middlemarch and shows them what you have. So you could have a community project, for example, that focuses on something that you'd really like the world to know about, such as the the rail trail, or perhaps the singles ball, you know, something that you'd really like to celebrate and share the memories of over the years. Something that's been going a while, obviously. Something that has lots of photos that we can share, and something that the community knows a lot about. So they have these memories and they can come and tell us who is in the photograph, what happened at that particular situation, and, you know, funny or sad or whatever stories that they want to share with us. And we would preserve them, record them, and make them available to the general public. Oh, that's us in a nutshell. How much time have I got? Oh, that was 5 minutes. Would you like to see some photos?
Yeah, I just, no, I can
Okay.
say something.
I'm going to show you. Sorry?
There's actually been a few of that type of recordings done over the years, and it'd be nice if you could get in touch with our museum, come up and...
Indeed. Actually, I forgot to mention that. We have already spoken to Dawn Coburn at the museum, and she suggested a couple of ideas for us already. What we're aiming to do is obviously not to take the place of the museum. We want to complement what the museum's already doing. They're doing a fabulous job already, but we want to do something alongside that we can support the museum with. So that's the idea of it. Dawn actually mentioned, I don't know them, but the Kerr brothers.
Kerr brothers,
yeah, everybody seems to think they might have a story to tell about them. So that could be a project. People come along and share their memories of them. I don't personally understand the significance because I'm from Outram, so I don't know the Kerr brothers. But I'm sure someone will enlighten me. Anyway, I'll show you some photos. If I can do this. Yeah, the photos. Here we go. So, for example, this is This is a project that the Lansar people uploaded to Scattered Seeds. So we recorded the history of Lansar, and they came out to Middlemarch and they discovered a tunnel. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it. There's a tunnel just north of Middlemarch, and they have some photos of that. So there's a bit of a history there. I'm going to move my screen there. So they found it in 2002, upstream from Middlemarch. It was dug by gold miners who were trying to divert the... This is very appropriate given what we've just been listening to divert the Taieri River so they could mine the riverbed. So there you are, maybe we need a tunnel. Anyway, so that's that one. That's one idea. Let me find another one for you. These are just some ideas. This is one from the Taieri Historical Society. And that's the Lee Stream Hotel. So they have uploaded that and told the story of the Lee Stream Hotel. So what we're asking for is photos and information about those photos. So people who have those memories. And it's valuable because, as you know, the Lee Stream Hotel is no more. I think it's a residential place now. But these sorts of stories are really valuable for people wanting to know more about them. And if anybody is covering local history or needs to know for whatever reason what became of the hotel. So it tells you the full story. Again, while we can still capture these stories from people who have them in their heads. So yeah, I'll probably stop there because I've got 2 minutes left. But does anyone have any questions? And are you keen to support?
Questions, please? Well, I think it's a great idea that because the ones in the museum are getting fairly ancient. So
well, I wouldn't say that, but okay.
It's true. I'm telling you the truth. And they've just about got the submarine project to cover up and things like that. And they've probably got a lot of research they have on that, but
yes,
could be utilised and shared with a lot of other people through your system.
Yes.
And Dawn is very, very, very thorough, but she's getting a bit longer in the tooth, and she'll fall off the perch one of these days. So, and there'll be a lot of stuff lost. And I think what you're doing is a great idea to preserve it for communities and the wider people. So yeah, but any other questions? Some might have different ideas that they need done, but there are quite a few interviews been done, I suppose, 10, 15 years ago with people while their males were still reasonably well in the cage by a lady, and I imagine this at the museum, but yeah, would probably fill the bill pretty good.
Yep. We have talked to Dawn about some of the oral histories they've got, because of course if you've got things on magnetic tape, they're fading already. The minute you've recorded them, they immediately start degrading. So if you can digitize them, that's so much the better. So yeah, we have been talking to them about that. But there may be other people who've got conversations they've had with people that have recorded it that we can preserve for them.
Yeah.
Great idea. Fully support it.
Thank you, Robin. Great. Well, where do we go from here? Should we email you, Barry, with some ideas, or shall we leave it to you to talk to the community and then you come back to us? What would you like us to do?
I think either or Robin, do you want to put it on the Little Mates Gossip page?
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Yeah, definitely. That will be one of the items that I put through on the page. So if you keep an eye open for that.
We will. Thank you so much.
Maybe if you could give me a phone contact number.
Absolutely.
Then we'll be able to follow up on points to get onto the page itself.
Right. I'll get those to you.
And also
Thank you very much.
Robin, then it could go perhaps in next month's Taieri Times.
Yeah.
Too late for this one.
In the Rockenfeller Post? In the Rockenfeller
Post? No, might still be
Post?
right. Yeah, because it's not the first till early next week, eh?
Yeah, I can check up on that.
Yes.
But definitely Rockenfeller Post would be a really good article. But I think Kay and Jill would probably be best to speak directly to them over that. But if you can give me the contact numbers, I'll make sure they touch base with you on it.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you so much, Robin. Appreciate that.
Also,
Kay, can I just...
Hi, Leanne. You're not going to tell me my smear's due, are you?
No. Definitely above the belt. The pages that you're showing us, is that from is it on the DCC library website?
It's on our library website, yes. It's actually it's a separate site, so it's called the Scattered Seeds Archive, and it's on a Recollect platform, so that's the name of the site, but you can access it via the library.
Right.
So it's on there under digital resources. I can send you through a link if that would be helpful anyway.
That'd be great. I think it's really exciting, and I think it's really cool to look at something that's not done by the museum, like to kind of think laterally about it. So look forward to hearing ideas.
Excellent. And Middlemarch really deserves its place on there. There's a little bit of information about Middlemarch, but there's so much more. You've got a massive history, and it really needs to be there. So it'll be lovely.
Cool.
Exciting. Yep.
Can you
Great.
access that through Connect, Kay?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that, Barry.
Well, it's for my own information. Can you access that through Connect? So I can in my lunch hour have a wee browse through it, or is it just
not directly? No, but if you go onto the library website, it's right at the top there under digital resources.
Sweet. I'll
Scattered Seeds.
I wonder, Kay, tomorrow or something, you could get something and flick it through so we could get it included in the monthly little A4 that goes out as well.
Perfect. Yep.
Would that be sensible, Robin?
If you flick it to me, Kay, I'll forward it on to board members.
Yep.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Yep.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And thank you both for your time.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, too.
Okay. And so we'd like to move Scattered Seeds, please. Thank you, Robin. Seconder. Thanks, Leanne. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Here we go.
Yep, Jill Bruce here.
Yep. Housing action plan. Jill, just hand over to you.
Yeah, sure. What do you want to know about it?
Tell us what you want to tell us, and then we'll pick holes and I mean ask questions.
Go on then. All right. So in the briefing paper that I sent out, it identifies that I've been seconded over from Kāinga Ora. I do two parts of work. So one part for Kāinga Ora, which I am trying to get the right people around the table so that they can meet their own targets and with building in the city. And their targets are sitting for the Otago Southland area at over 300 homes. So in the Dunedin city space, probably over 150. And so that we can actually get things moving. In the council space, Sandy's asked me to create a housing plan which looks across that continuum that is in that paper. So looking at all of the opportunities that we have to create more housing, more opportunities across that whole group. So what I've been doing in the last 6 months or so is talking to anybody who will talk to me. I am happy to talk to any of you. I am happy for you to forward on my details to anybody. I should have put my email address at the bottom of that. It's just jill.brown@dcc. Please feel free. I've talked to anybody who will talk to me, and what I've done is I've I've got a whole lot of information from people and have created some themes out of that, some themes for work. They're divided into 5 areas, one being advocacy, communications, communities, that sort of stuff. And that will all be presented to the C&C committee on the 5th of April. Once that's been looked at and noted, then we go on and we create an actual plan, and then we create some actions. Noting that the actions are not going to be all DCC. In fact, a lot of the stuff that we've discovered along the way, which is not tremendously surprising, is that people don't know what they don't know. They don't know the opportunities that are available to help others. So I can give you a specific example. One of the builders said to me, one of the developers said to me, well, what do the disability groups want? And I said, well, actually, as a starting point, if you build from now on, if every house you build from now on has 850 doors, that makes a significant difference in the future for anybody who might become wheelchair bound, who might need a walker. You don't need to worry about the bathrooms at this stage, but that makes a massive difference to people getting into their homes. And he's gone, I've never thought of that, didn't know that. And he's come back to me and he says, every house that I build is now going to have an 850 doors. So a lot of this stuff is actually quite simple, some low-hanging fruit, but some of it is big and complex, like advocating for an increase in the building code so that we end up with 6 and 7 and 8 star houses rather than 2 and 3. There you go, in a nutshell.
Any questions? Too well explained.
Love the silence.
Yeah, through the chair, Jill, I was just wondering, are you looking at single houses, or are you looking at complexes? Are you looking at subdivisions? You know, are you looking at retirement type settings? What could you explain that a little bit more, please?
So yeah, we're looking at everything across the board. So I've done everything from speak to people who have no housing resilience, so sitting in a homeless shelter, right through to discussing housing and housing problems, or how can we increase housing stock with people who have no issues with housing resilience. So, you know, people who have significant income resources, whatever. And there's different problems at different areas. So in the homeless shelter, the people who were there, the overwhelming thing they asked for was access to a public shower. They weren't talking about actually even wanting a home. They were talking about actually just wanting access to a public shower. But yeah, we're looking at the whole gamut, and the DCC's done some awesome work. The planning guys have done some awesome work around allowing intensification in the central city with the 2GP, which is brilliant. And now we just need to actually start getting that happening. It's my feeling, and it is only my feeling, that there could be some nervousness about building apartment buildings that are affordable or more affordable. But I think we're moving in that direction.
I think there's been some movement on that in the likes of the Upper High Street area, isn't there? That complex there.
Yeah, there has been. Again, though, those are they're pretty heavy. They're pretty heavily priced. And because that one is particularly operates under a different ownership structure, then mortgages are difficult to come by.
Right. Okay.
One of the things that I have been talking to people about, especially when you're talking to people from the community or DHB, they've identified there's a lot of people who want to age in place or who are aging in place, which is, you know, great, but they're becoming more and more isolated. And a lot of those people could be singles or couples who are older, who are living in big homes, which could be, you know, we're effectively underutilizing a home or a section that could be developed. So there's a whole lot of opportunity for a whole lot of discussion and a whole lot of getting people into the right places. People who want to downsize at the moment, if your mum and dad Brown who live in Green Island, the people who want to downsize and come into an apartment situation because that's going to be better for them, no ground to look after, whatever, there's not a lot that's affordable. And rest homes, because they are quite busy and we have an aging population, you can't get into a rest home necessarily until you are quite unwell, because people are being encouraged to stay in the homes. So we've got this sort of real point of being stuck. So there's a couple of really quite big things that would sort of start to pull that apart and start to break down some of those bottlenecks, but it's going to take some combined work and a whole lot of people sitting around the table and nutting some things out, which is what I'm hoping to achieve.
Great. I see a huge opportunity in the Strath Taieri area. You know, a lot of people, you know, getting on in years and wanting to stay in the community. But as you say, you know, large sections, large houses, you know, the options for them here are not that great.
Yeah.
So, you know, having options would be fantastic.
Yeah, and people don't always have either the money or the wish to move into an old people's home. And I think we have to be, or a retirement village, I think we also have to be mindful that studies prove that if somebody moves into a retirement village and doesn't have access to a range of the community, so a range of age groups, a range of beliefs, actually their mental health can actually suffer from that. So, you know, there's a whole social isolation, well-being type part that fits with people aging in place as well, which is kind of concerning. So we need to be really actively thinking as a community, how can we increase people's well-being as well, and that comes from their housing and other aspects.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Any other questions? Okay, I'd like to thank Jill for the presentation, and I think it'll get a bit of interest moving. We did try it probably 25 years ago about pensioner housing or a block of that years ago, but the country people are fairly independent and resilient, so it sort of fell away, but hey, it's always nice to re-air some of those earlier things, and there's a different clientele. It could be a different thought on it. So, and we're only an hour from Dunedin.
Absolutely.
So yeah, at one time the sections were cheap, but they've changed.
As I said, sorry, I didn't mean to speak over you.
That's
if
right.
Anybody wants to talk to me, pass on my details, whatever. This is going to be a living document. There's no way that it needs to be just, you know, created and put on a shelf. That's not my intention. So if anybody wants to speak to me about anything specific or any ideas they have, feel free.
Thank you very, very much. And thank you for your presentation. And
no problem.
Hopefully someone will get in touch with you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Would you like to move the housing action plan, please? Robin, thank you. Mike, sorry. Robin, all in favour, please say aye. Carries. Carries. Number 9, Jenny's report.
One thing which I neglected to remind the board of under confirmation agenda was the funding application received after the agenda had gone out from the Strath Taieri Hockey Club, and if the board had in mind to add it to the agenda because the funding is required before the next board meeting. We can consider that if you wanted to under the project fund item in this report, but the board needs to have in mind that they wish to add it to the agenda and somebody would need to move along those lines.
Happy to move.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, so
all in favour, please say aye. Yes, carried, thank you. So continue, Jenny.
Okay, so you need to consider that, and then the rest of my report can be just taken as read. So you might want to do the funding application first and perhaps remind the board what it was.
Yeah, but yeah, sorry, it came in on Monday, I think Sunday or Monday. So has everyone read it?
Yeah.
The application?
Yeah.
Any discussions or a mover or a for or a dinner?
Just a reminder that the funds in your project fund will need to be spent by the next meeting. It's your last opportunity, and you've got 7,500 left for the current financial year.
I'd like to move in support of this proposal. I think supporting the young kids, especially in a side of it and identification as part of the community, I think is really important. So I'd move that we support this application.
To the amount they've asked for? They
1,800.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Was there any thoughts?
Second first.
Oh, okay, second for that, please.
Yeah, right.
Thanks, Mark. Favour? Oh, I just wondered, can I discuss on that?
Yeah.
If is there any reason why we couldn't increase that?
No reason.
No.
I don't know. I'm just bearing in mind we've got one meeting only, and it won't be able to be carried over, which will leave 5 or 6 grand at the present point in time. I just wondered if it, you know, they've asked for a reasonable figure. If we could increase it, they've got to make the rest of their money by what I read and briefly talk with fundraising, and it's not a great time frame. I just personally wondered if it was worth. And I've got no vested interest. I just wondered if it was worth perhaps a little bit more.
Yeah, totally. From my perspective, you know, the total ask is 2,530, or total project cost is 2,530. We've got 7.5 left there. From my perspective, I have no problem at all supporting the idea of the entire project being covered. Actually, the time frame they've got to raise that money is pretty blimmin' tight if they're going to get the extra money within the community in the time frame before the season starts.
Yeah, I just think it covers a wide range of kids.
Totally. Yep.
Do you want to amend your motion with the approval of the seconder?
Well, we could make it a fairly nice round figure of 2,500, which leaves $30 to raise.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I would amend that if you know, if the seconder's happy with that.
Yeah, happy.
Okay, well, with the amended motion, all in favour that it be increased to $2,500 for the Middlemarch Junior Hockey Club. Please say aye.
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 Against? Obviously no. Carried. Thank you very much, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of extremely happy kids that they're training at the tennis court.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just thank you for your suggestion on that, of raising that money.
Yes. Thank you, Robert. Okay, sorry to change things, Jenny, but
so yeah, and just the rest of the recording I said take as read.
Yep. Very happy with that. No other questions? Okay. Somebody please move Jenny's report.
Yep.
Thank you, Mark. Seconder. Thank you, Mike. Favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. My report.
I'm sorry, one thing I did forget, sorry, not very organised. You just need to be aware of the draft annual plan timetable, and the submission period is the 31st of March to the 22nd of April, which is before your next meeting. So you may want to think about how you're going to make a submission, or base it on your plan, or have a wee workshop, or...
Yeah, I think we might have to.
Yeah, so just be aware of that when it comes through.
Before the end of April. Well, we've only got a month, haven't we?
Yeah, and it can be approved at the June meeting.
Right. Yeah. So do you want to take that on board? Be good. Okay, move on to my one. I've just like to say, last Thursday I had civil defence, or they call it something else. Ben is part of that. Andy came up and went a drive around the Riviera. He's going to come up another day, probably one of our meeting nights, and check the civil defence equipment that's in the hall. So he had to drive around. I think he'll fit in all right. Then had Mike up on Friday. I'm sure he'll fit in good. So it's nice to have people from the council prepared to come up and have a flick around, and it worked in real well with me just poking around doing very little. So yeah, Andy lives in White Caddy. Yes, Mike's in town here. So,
I enjoyed my trip around.
Yeah.
I hear about all of this.
Nah. Okay. I'll start with the grass cutting. I think you'll all agree with me. It's absolutely disgraceful. The contractor that's doing the railway precinct's got it pretty tidy. That's inside the railway yard. I think overall the cemetery's pretty tidy, and the rest is a bloody disgrace. I don't know where to go now. The question I did have: who was the main contractor?
My report, Mr. Chairman. Item 13.
I know this. We're all pushing and shoving against each other. So I'm just hopeful this year the season's probably stopped growing grass nearly. We may be hopefully better, but I think we're going to have to keep whacking on it.
I think they're working reasonably hard with the contractors to ensure what their expectations are met. And that's comment in my report from the Transport Manager, Ms. Benson.
Yeah, it's essentially just gone back to the original stuff up that one contractor does the showground, another one might do the memorial in Robertson Park, and then somebody has a play around with a mower when it's wet on around the township, and that's why it's so untidy. Whereas a previous number of years it was done by a local person, subcontracted to the main contractor, and it was real tidy. It was cut when the grass was dry, not when the poor guys come up on a Monday or whatever day and it's hosing down with rain, and just it looks disgraceful. So, well, hopefully that'll be better.
I'll have a bit of a yarn with Janine and see what I can do from me being a part of this.
Yep.
So just put in there that Mike Perkins will liaise with internal staff to see what the story is, to see what he can do.
And to be fair to Janine, she came home at Christmas, New Year, to come through Middlemarch and got some action done, but it's been an extremely growthy season, probably the best the Strath Tairi's ever had.
What I do know is those types of contracts go on a certain amount of cuts per year. It doesn't go on, depending on where they are. With my reservoir sites, where they're in certain areas, they maintain a certain level. Other areas, they go, we will cut that 3 times a year, but it's not, it could be 2 now and 1 way later. As long as they do their 3 in the year, they've met their obligation under the contract. I'll have a word with Janine and see what I can figure out what's being done and see if I can push things.
Throw the hit and miss frame into that too, Mike, please. It's been all over the show. Folden Mar, I've asked a question again.
No further update.
No further update. And I just wonder if what say we have about people who have noticed in the last month a lot of more railway wagons or surplus or rough, pretty untidy looking rolling stock being parked at Middlemarch and at Sutton. And I actually noticed today on Gladstone Road there's quite a few of the old Tory Gorge carriages just off the main truck line along Gladstone Road. And also saying that there was a train in Middlemarch today, I'm not sure what for, but the track must be still usable. So it's quite interesting, to be fair.
So there's that update in my report from DCH.
Yeah. And I'll get on to some of the pitch sessions while grass cutting. Gorse and Broom, I mentioned that on the was quite bad over the Hyde Hill. So just can't answer whether it's been sprayed yet. The graders just finished Hartfield Road, and I had a phone call from a cocky at the top end that seems funny why it's just getting graded and yet there's a rally due to start. So it was just trying to get assurance that it'll be graded after the rally if it needed to be. Bring it right. On the community garden, and look, I'm not against it, but we've got a little top-up store at Middlemarch that's trying our damnedest to keep going for the community, and we've got the community garden with their pantry, they call it a pantry round at the postal agency, which I think it personally should be round at the garden. And I think Maggie often to look after it for them, but there's also other goods going in there. There's tinned fruit, there's jam, there's coffees and that. We'll end up with, Maggie will say, stuff you, and we'll have nothing at Middlemarch. So and whereas the community board gave the community garden money for a tunnel house, and I think it's great, their own produce. But I'm just a little bit concerned that there's a lot of our older people use Maggie's as a, well, she calls it a top-up store, you know, for the just essential, save them going to town. And if we lose that, we're back to what we were before she started.
Hey, Barry.
Yes, John.
I had a yarn to Maggie about that, and she's quite happy now because her and Cynthia are talking, and she's told her, you know, about canned food and that sort of stuff. So yeah, she's going to take it out.
Okay, that's fine. Yep. So I think for produce and that it was okay, but I think that one day somebody will, because it's on the main drag, somebody will rip it off and then there'll be all sorts of problems. Whereas round by the garden, it's where the garden is. But, okay, thank you, John. And just Anzac Day. I just got a text yesterday, and I've called it RSA today, that looks like we'll have an Anzac parade, and I'm calling in there tomorrow, hopefully get poppies. So it looked like up till yesterday, Anzac Day was just going to fall by the wayside. So if everyone's happy, we'll proceed again, and I'll try and get hold of the army tomorrow, see if they'll come up. It looks as though things have opened up a bit, and Mosgiel RSA said today when I called in there that it's just gone nuts with the announcement yesterday. Now they're trying to get their groups together, and I hope to pick up poppies tomorrow and bring home so that we're not on the back foot like we were last year, so that we do get a good representation. I think I've asked for about 6 pottles to put round, which is the shops, the pub, centre, you know, the farmlands, and I'll probably try and get one through to Hyde. So that if anyone thinks of any other ones, please give us a yell. But it looked as though it was just going to sadly go by without, because the numbers not. They were working out how to hold their one, and Mosgiel was trying to limit to 100 return people, which have probably died off. But so it looks as though things are going to proceed again, which I'll catch up again tomorrow with. So if anyone's got ideas where we can put poppy buckets, if we get them early enough, we can probably do it to the school. But some other years it's fallen on school holiday time, so it's been a waste of time. Hopefully I'll follow that through, and any other ideas, I'll try the army. We'll have to find, has anyone got any ideas of a speaker? I mean, William Lou, the last couple of years, he's from the barracks down here in Dunedin with the army, and he's been quite good. He enjoys coming up, but also I'll check with the pub whether we have the aftermatch there or go back to the hall like we've done the last year or a couple of years. And I'll talk with the cafe and the pub, which do some of the food, and the RSA and Mosgiel supply a couple of boxes of savoury. So if anyone's got any ideas, please give us a ring. I've got a week or two yet that I'm not real busy. And I'll soon be doing that, but some of the jobs will line up for me. So yeah, people keep that in mind. The other thing that started off with quite a bit of interest in is the bloke shed. Now, was there any movements or advancement on that, Robin, or people shed? I shouldn't say bloke shed, I mean a people shed.
Yeah, we're kind of calling it the community shed.
Yeah.
Jock probably could give you an update on that. Jock was going to coordinate an on-site meeting with the key people. So yeah, that was going to be discussed tonight, actually, in a separate meeting. But no, I can't give you any update other than that. You know, we're still keen on the concept, still keen on the idea. and it's just a matter, I think, of getting the key players together in the one building and coming up with a position on it.
Yeah, I popped in there this week. There's tons of room. And I had Polly's company to Timaru back yesterday and briefly talked about it on the way. There's tons of room, and he's even offered a generator to run a bit of electricity, pump the water, and so you can utilise the toilet.
Fantastic. So all we need really is to get the key players from the Vintage Machinery Group and a few others into the same room and sort out how it's all going to happen.
Yeah, and if pump the water up, it's run lights so that it's just, I was advised that if the power was to be hooked on again, it had to be completely rewired, which would be a horrendous cost. So we could suffice with a generator, and Polly quite happy to bring his down.
Fantastic. So I think getting it established will be the key thing, and then where it goes to from there in terms of wiring and that can deal with that as and when. So yes. No, good suggestion, and as long as we can get you and Polly and a few of the other key people into the same room at the same into that building at the same time, and we can sort it out and then go back to Kate's trust, the Start Trust, just to formalise, occupancy and that sort of stuff.
Well, it's probably handy enough for the community garden to put some stuff in if they needed it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I think there's some, I think it's a really good opportunity there. So yeah, we'll be in touch, Barry. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I think we're all the same, Robin. Just Polly and myself, and there's Footy and the pub next door, and a few others. But everyone's getting longer in the teeth. And
Footy's told me he's got Kerry Rennick jacked up to come too.
Yeah, I spoke to Kerry a few weeks ago. Yeah, and let's utilise it. It's
great.
Another bit of action for the community in town.
Great.
And clean up. It's not as bad as it has been. It needs a pit pumped out, but that's only a submersible pump or something, and pump her out. But yeah, it's just wondering how it was going. And the other question: how's the trust going?
Very well. We've got a number of projects underway, and we had a meeting just the other day with a group down on the in Mosgiel, based out of Mosgiel, funded by DCC actually, which they seem to replicate quite a bit of the intention and the coverage that this trust here has. So it's a matter of us working closely with them to make sure that we don't kind of trip over each other and optimize the money that we've got available. So there's a few initiatives already underway. One of them is a welcome to the Strath pack that is just for all new families coming into the community. They get a pack which gives them a comprehensive introduction to the area. It'll be supplemented with produce and that from the community. So that's one that's well advanced. We've already got underway the COVID pack. So we've taken on in combination with the food ferries, distribution of food for the families that are affected by COVID. And there's a few other initiatives well underway too. So those are the two key ones at the moment that we've got really already up and running. We had hoped to have sorted something with DCC over use of the railway, the building, but that didn't eventuate, and it doesn't look like it will. So we've secured alternative office space in what was the old cycle surgery building in the back of that as an interim, just to give us a base to work from. So things are moving quite well. And as I said, there's a meeting tonight. So I can give you an update after that if you like, if you're interested.
That's good. Yeah.
And I'll give you a formal update at the next meeting. I think might be the best idea.
Yep, fine. Yeah, it's about 6 weeks, I think. The other thing I forgot, I had 2 or 3 people, dust suppressant, and it started off with the hide winds. Previously, Cook's Transport used to do the houses down Prendergast Road and that with waste oil, which you're not allowed to use now, so they've not been on the Strath Taieri dust suppressant list. And also had an applicator, or talk from Cameron McCauley, he was talking about it too. So I just wondering, Jenny, if you can get there's forms that they can fill in. I think out of the 3 at Hyde marked from memory, one of them doesn't fit the bill, it's too far off the road. I think it's Simon's one. But we'll get the forms and give them to each person and get them filled out. And that way we should be in time for this coming year. They were going to send me the forms which haven't arrived yet, so I just did remember about it.
Yeah, that's right. I think they're on the website, but I'll check.
So yeah, that's all, and we'll just probably just disappointed it's taking so long to get some answers with Folden Mar or Folden Hill. I call it Folden Hill and always will. Yeah, so see watch the space, I suppose. So apart from that, I think yeah, any questions or any additional parts that somebody may have that could be a benefit?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just I guess following up from the public forum, there were some questions put to us there. Will they be discussed at the next meeting?
I would hope so, and I would hope they would be in attendance too, Robert.
Great. Okay, thank you.
I think it would be better.
Just so they know that we're not ignoring their comments. That's all. I think it's yeah, they did the presentation and they did put some questions to the board and to members actually. So you know, it would be really good to be able to give them feedback on that.
Yeah, yeah. No, certainly I'll be on the agenda.
Thank you.
And yeah, no, that's fine. Somebody like to move my report, please?
Yeah,
thanks, Rob. Second. Thanks. Thank you, Michael. Favour, please hand up. Against, shake it. Carry. Mike.
I can't put my hand up.
A dog might eat it. Mike, you going to give us an update?
Yeah, happy to do that. Yeah, hey, well, look, there's not much for me. I guess one of the things, this is another remote meeting, and that's all I've been doing this year. I don't think I've been into council for some all year, actually. Staff have been working very busy getting everything ready for the consultation period, which, as Jenny said, we need to get a submission from the board, and that starts in the next month. And to be quite honest, I think that's a lot of staff work going into that. We've got a council meeting next week. And that actually, you referred earlier, Barry, to the oh goodness, earthquake prone buildings. We had Pete up at our last meeting, and the council have got a paper on that next week. So there's basically there were no submissions from the district. There was no other thing, so it's going to go through pretty much as it was told to us. We've got a couple of notice of motions you'll probably read in today's OD2. Well, I see they've got an online version already. There's a couple of notice of motions coming next week. One is to do with a decision that council made last meeting to join the Democracy in Action group, which was a number of councils, and there's been quite a strong position taken by the local Wūnanga that they're thinking that was a particularly poor decision by council, so we're going to have a notice of motion to try and redress that. But other than that, finances, we had a finance committee meeting last week. Finance is looking pretty good. CapEx is Mike's group there, they're spending an awful lot of money and they're well ahead of budget. I don't know if that's a change in worker. Good on you anyway, Mike. And
I'll take the credit.
Take it while you can get it. I'll be criticising you next week. But the other thing, it probably does raise a slight concern that Three Waters are doing so well that some of the other areas are perhaps, we see the total figure and it looks fantastic and right on where it should be, but what we've got some other departments that are possibly getting a wee bit behind. And there can be a variety of reasons. It's not always because it was certainly not because people are doing a poor job. But yeah, generally, I would say almost scary how accurate the budget's been the last couple of years. And as always, I'm pretty impressed with a lot of the staff we've got and how they're working and the job they do. And you see that even today with people from the library coming in, just amazing the services that some of these people offer. And you know, like just even the fact that they'll be kept prepared to come and help you digitise your own private photo collections and that sort of stuff, really quite amazing. I think we get far better service for our rates than we sometimes realise. So, but yeah, other than that, any questions, feel free to throw them at me. Otherwise, I'm going to eat the tea.
Any questions to Mike at all? Well, thank you, Mike. Somebody like to move Mike's report, please?
Yeah.
I'm probably happy enough to do it too.
Okay, all in favour? Thanks. Carried. You'd have to be Mike, wouldn't you? Yeah. Declare the meeting closed and just wait a few minutes till Paul, who's in Gisborne or somewhere, to disconnect us all. Thank you very much, Phil.
But it's to do with biodiversity and food resilience, fruit trees, etc. So I've suggested that the next meeting would be the last opportunity to get that in this year. Is that the case? If they get, okay, so that if they get their bid together and get it in prior to the next meeting, it can be considered at the next meeting.
Yes, but we would need to expend the funds before the end of June. Yeah. Ah, right. Okay. So the expenditure of the funds is the crunch as much as the approval. Right. Thank you.
Well, we don't want to give it back.
No. Thank you.